Yeah.
My name is Nikoleta. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, guys.
Hi, Nicola.
Hi. I'm a little frazzled, so I'm just trying to exhale. I'm trying to exhale. I'm in the middle of work, in the middle of a sober house, in the middle of 5 sober houses, and it's been quite a day. So I've just been getting hit all morning. But I'm grateful to be here. I had a great experience being with you guys last time. And thanks for having me. I get to participate in my recovery. I haven't spoken on steps 8 and 9 in a while. I haven't done a step 8 and 9 in a while. That's the truth. But I'll share with you my experience. My sober date is September 15, 2006. I would say I'm the luckiest girl in the world. As soon as I was a free range alcoholic, what that means for me is that I was locked down for the first 4 months of my recovery. And as soon as I ended up in a sober house within a day, I met a woman and her partner. They were doing a meditation workshop in this sober house that I came to. And that woman became my sponsor. And we started doing the work immediately the next day. He took me through the big book. And she took me through the steps. And I remember her telling me every step that I was on, it was the most important step. Every single step that I was on, it was the most important step. And every single paragraph in the big book was the most important paragraph in the big book. And you know what? As I had the experience of that, and as I read the book, I felt that as well. I felt the importance of it, and I was desperate and willing enough. And graced with that kind of willingness to trust her. I trusted her and had no choice also, had no other choice. But we're talking about steps 8 and 9. So I came into that with a certain energy that was trailing from the step 1 experience. Right. So step 1, I was like completely defeated. I felt completely defeated and completely cornered. And I, for some odd reason, understood that everything I did from that point forward, as radical as it was, and as much as I didn't like it or understand it, that my life depended on it. And so with that kind of energy, I decide to step into the unknown, and I decide to have a relationship with this higher power and have a dialogue with this higher power. And I sit down and try to look at myself and how I related to myself and to life around me and to people around me in the inventory. And as a result of that, in step 5, I have this experience where not only do I understand that this has nothing to do with drinking and that alcoholism is inside of me, not in the bottle, but I have these heart-opening realizations. For me, step 5 experience was incredibly heart-opening. I feel very lucky about the sponsor I had. She was incredibly attractive. She was the attraction, not the promotion. She had the clarity in her eyes. I felt incredibly safe and I trusted her. And this incredible honesty came out, and a credible willingness to know the truth with no agenda, really with no agenda. And, like, when we approach the truth like that, or when we seek truth like that, it's been my experience that that's when truth sets us free. Because it's really not self-serving. It's just about what's really happening, with all my stories and all my arguments with life and all the ideas about what they shouldn't have done and how they shouldn't have acted and what shouldn't have happened to me, and all of the ways that I, bump into reality, and reality always wins, right? And I create this element of me being a victim or a martyr or whatever else, and not take ownership of my life, and not stand on my feet, and not feel authentic, and not be autonomous, and all of that stuff, right? So this is all kind of encompassed this 4th and 5th step experience. And in the 5th step, because the inventories, that sex and harm inventory is really the great equalizer, right? And as a result of that 4th column, we also get to see some of the ways I start looking at how I've moved in life, and what ideas I have about life, and what beliefs I have about life, and how disconnected I was from the depth of my being, and how much I lived in the virtual reality of my mind and interpretation of my mind about how life is, right? I was just so out to lunch. I was really like living my life from the neck up only. I had no sense of connection, right? And who wouldn't want to numb that? Who wouldn't want to numb that? Of course, I always wanted to get loaded. I was like running away from my own self. I was escaping my own mind. I was quieting the mind, really. And, to 12 steps for me has been a spiritual journey and a journey of awakening. It's really my spiritual path. Nothing else was going to bring me to my knees. And I think nothing else was going to pause me enough to really drop into the heart a little bit more. And so as a result of that fifth step experience, I've also experienced a tremendous amount of regret of how much I betrayed my heart and the truth of my own being and higher power, or whatever you want to call it, and the harm I've caused. And I got in touch with that pain. And I think this is really, really important. This like softening of the heart that happens in 4 and 5, I think is like, it sets such a stage for the amends. And, I was given, that homework list, the step 8 list, which I took from the fourth step, and every name and institution, and that was on my resentments, and that showed up in my fears, and that was obviously on my sex and harms, went on that list. But then I was asked to really sit with each one and get real clear on the harm. Really, I went into the emotional memory of the relationship with that person, or the idea behind the harm, right? The idea that I carried, my argument with them, or my argument with it. And some of them were very, very clear. I mean, cheat, lie, and steal. I mean, like, is there really much thinking? I mean, like, when I was doing BS stuff, I'm like, I knew it. Like, we just know, like, we just like, just like I knew when I was 19 that my relationship with booze was not normal. I knew on the first date that he wasn't maybe the one. I knew that, I was like lying even when I was, like pretending that I wasn't, you know what I mean? We just know when we move a certain way. And some of them were maybe a little bit trickier because there was a story behind it. But that kind of opening of the heart, and that like forgiveness that starts entering the picture as a result of 4 and 5, and taking our own inventory, looking at the way I have moved in these relationships, what I've done, what I haven't done, what I failed to do, and how I chose to look at it, and how it was serving some selfish and self-centered idea of how I wanted to be seen, or what I wanted to get, or what I didn't want to lose. This becomes the base for me. This has been a very important base for the amends, because I think that this idea of like, I should just do the right thing, but I'm not feeling it emotionally. I think that's I don't know. I don't know that transmits really. I think we transmit so much more with our being, with how we show up. And, like, how would I want to be approached by someone? How would I want to be approached by someone? I want them to be real. I want to hear sincerity. I want to hear responsibility. I want to be allowed, like, listening, like real space, safe space. I want that kind of healing. I want it to be real. So it's not an intellectual exercise. It's really something. It was like a movement of being. It was a movement of the heart for me. And I was petrified. Why was I petrified? Because I had no reference point. Like, if I hurt you, I ran away from you. Like, I never want to see you again. I'm going to try to erase you from my mind and pretend you were never there. And, get loaded as much as possible, or like move to another state or something. Like, I mean, that was the way that I like lived life. I mean, like, I had no reference point for that. I had no reference point that we actually make the approach. So I think that there's this idea, like, if I don't make amends, I'll get drunk. And the book warns us about that. And if I don't make amends, am I really willing to go to any lengths to have a spiritual experience and all of that stuff? But I think that the heart moves us and the regret moves us, because we see that I've betrayed my own self. I mean, I cried my eyes out after the fifth step at the realization of how much harm I have caused and how I have moved. Cried my eyes out. And I think that that kind of motivates the amends process. That really motivates the amends process. I think it's a movement of the heart, really. And it's like all about connection because, you know, like we're so disconnected. You know, we alcoholics, I'm very disconnected. I mean, especially when I live in the virtual reality of my mind, right? Or when I'm getting loaded. I mean, I crave connection. I yearn for connection. I yearn for that connection with my own self, but I also yearn for that connection with others, that sense of unity, that sense of belonging, you know? And yet here I am stepping on the toes of others, right? Or here I am just like actually pushing them away, you know? And the mind might rationalize that that's okay, but the heart knows better, right? You know, the value is on not creating harm, really. And so, you know, the book goes into great lengths to differentiate. I'm sure you got Big Book Compendium knows the book better than I know the book, but it does pages and pages of like 5 or 6 or 7 different kinds of amends, those that involve others and financial amends and those in criminal offenses and the man we hated or resented or the family amends, those involving infidelity. And I'm sure I forgot a few, but what was my experience? I started with the amends. First of all, most people thought that I was dead. I just like disappeared for a while and then I reappeared. And so I was moved to make amends and I started with the easier ones. And what I mean by that, those who knew what I was doing, those who knew that I was getting sober and where I was and were willing to accept the amends because I wanted to have an experience of the amends first. And I think that the with each amend, it was important, obviously, to be to I talked to my sponsor. She's still my sponsor. Her name is Lena. I talked to my sponsor for every single amend. I sat with every single amend, and I sat in silence with every single amend because I just really, really, really wanted to show up in a real way on my own power. I was absolutely petrified to talk to anyone or to look at anyone. And it was very uncomfortable. I didn't have an experience like that. But when I thought about the fact that I wasn't alone and there was this power that I was accessing and tapping into that was coming with me to make the amends. And the reason I was making the amends was not for any agenda for them to like me or for us to have a relationship of any kind or anything like that. It was literally motivated by the pain of breaking my own integrity. And what do I mean by that? You know, on every coin, we have like that to thine own self be true. But what self am I being true to? Right? The depth of my being. You know, like I literally experienced the pain in my heart of causing you harm. I cause you harm and I'm in pain. Unless I'm connected to my heart or God or the depth of my being, I won't feel that. Because the mind, the parallel thinking will constantly be there with excuses about why you deserved it or earned it or whatever the case may be. But the truth is your pain is my pain. And if I cause you pain, I will be in pain. And if I broke my integrity or my values, I will be in pain as well. And so, you know, I've been very lucky. I've had good experiences of amends. Everybody I've encountered has accepted my amends. I can't really say that anybody threw me out of their office or didn't like what I had to say, but I had a very significant step 1 experience. I mean, literally, I went from killing myself to there was a manipulated pause to time stopped to the mental obsession was fully removed and you know, the red carpet of Alcoholics Anonymous rolled out and I was like graced by this incredible 12-step solution focused sponsor and mentors and a big book home group and everything was just handed to me. I'm telling you, I'm the luckiest girl in the world. So that's been my journey. I was given the truth from day one and I was And I was graced with an incredible amount of willingness to do this radical stuff, despite my mind protesting. Despite my mind going like, what? You do what? You give them back the money? They don't even know. They don't even know. They don't know I took it. But I know I took it. I know I took it. Now, how do you live with that when you're in awareness? When if if this is about serving truth, how do you live with that? How do you not get loaded knowing that? How do I, like all of my inventory was about what do I know that I don't want to know? Like, what am I avoiding? Like, what am I like pretending is not there? Right? I just couldn't pretend anymore. Like the jig was up, like the game was over. I've pretended my whole life. I've manipulated. I've like tried to control situations and people and my thinking and my drinking and my life. And I failed. The truth is I failed. I was brought to my knees and I was invited, because this is really an invitation into this way of life. Completely opposite from the way that I thought life is to be lived. And it's been, as the book says, indescribably more wonderful as time passes. And as deep as I want to go is as deep as it brings me or takes me or meets me. And the big book, the same way, meets me as deep as I want to go. And so, in the beginning of my recovery, my definition of harm was like these really basic harms of like, I cheated, I lied, I stole, I cheated, I lied, or something along those lines. And then as the years passed, it's been like any way that I, devalue you, any way that I disrespect you, any way that I make you less than myself, any way that I'm not, you're not like a mirror or a reflection of me, and that comes in various forms. And I think that as we experience the depth of like an awakening that's possible, we get to be moved by those kinds of things, right? The heart kind of moves us. But some of the amends, I think that the most important thing about the amends, and I'm just trying so hard to really speak from the experience without looking at the book, was sincerity, being real, asking myself, how would I want to be approached, and really putting myself in their shoe. And off the bat, like as soon as you ask that question, you kind of know, like, just be real. Because, anytime that I was approached in my life, but by someone, no matter what they said, that was incredibly honest or sincere or real or genuine, whatever you want to call it, I responded to that. And I responded to that differently than I would have responded to it. Maybe somebody else saying the same thing. Right? It wasn't just words. There was like a juice to the way that they approached me. And so I took me with money. With money and interest, it took me 3 years of my early recovery to make that right for institutions, banks, and individuals. I think making a deal that, being true to my word was important. Being true to my word was important. So if I said to somebody that I was going to put $120 in their bank every first of the month, it was really important that I put $120 in their bank every first of the month. It's like, it's that simple. Can you believe it? Like, there's like nothing else to talk about. Like, not the second of the month, not the third, not the fifth, not the, I did what I said. I had to walk the talk. I didn't approach it nonchalantly. And if I couldn't, then I didn't promise it. Because that's also an element of living in truth, right? The element of living in truth is that I didn't promise something that I couldn't do. Because this is all about action. And the chapter it's in is about into action. And we're taking action and other people are involved here. And I was serving this power now, not myself. And the motivation when we serve the power is a lot different, right? It wasn't really about me. There was an immense amount of gratitude that I was alive, that I was moved, that I was carried, that I was graced, and I was willing. And I trusted my sponsor, who told me it's the most important thing. And I trusted her direction when she told me and kept me on point to always have an amends scheduled until I was done with the amends. And I'm grateful for that, because I see that on my own accord, I would have dragged it. If I didn't have that kind of accountability. So I think having sponsors is really important, that are invested in us, like healing ourselves and healing the other person, healing these relationships, or making them right? Because the amends is like to constitutionally or permanently change a document, whatever. It's to sincerely set right the wrong, right? And to set right the wrong, I need to be clear on the wrong, and I need to verbalize how I'm going to make it right. And then I need to allow the other person to let me know how they would like me to make it right. And if they say something extraordinary, then I can always go back to my sponsor and ask for advice on that and get back to them. But I think that we show up in this way that these people have never seen us. When we make amends, we're showing up changed. We're already changed. We're in the process of change. And then each amend, for me, encouraged and supported the next amend. Each amend encouraged and supported the next amend. The last thing I did was family. But I'll tell you some amends experiences. There was a man I was with who became incredibly wealthy and famous and unreachable, and moved to another country, where he married a supermodel in Brazil and lived there as a multimillionaire. And I had absolutely no way of contacting him. And I could not stop. I just remember he kept coming up, because that was another exercise I did with my sponsor when I was on the amends. I was really checking what was coming up, like who I was moved to next. Which way did the regret move me? Like who was coming up for me? Like because this is, again, moved by this power, right? I'm not doing it. It's like being done through me, and I'm being informed by something other than the mind. And I think it's really important to know that we get informed by something other than the mind. And he kept coming up, and I had no way of reaching him. And so my sponsor told me, just hold it on your heart. Hold the intention on your heart. I had the intention, and I held the intention on my heart, and I was willing. And the book talks a lot about that. We only have to be willing. Willing is it's like a prayer in itself. Willingness is a prayer. It's like an act of prayer. And that gets responded to. Universe responds to that. It's in my experience. And so I had it on my heart. And then one day my phone rings, and it's him. And long story short, he divorced the supermodel. He moved back. He visited New York City for 3 days. He passed by the building office where I used to work for many years, where I used to work with my sister, and he knew that my sister was there. So he contacted the office and my sister and said, I've been thinking about Nikoleta. I would really like to know how she's doing. Can you give me her phone number? I mean, you can't make this shit up. You can't make this up, right? I mean, I tried to locate him. I tried to find him. He was on my inventory. My sponsor says, keep it on your heart. Just be willing. Keep it on your heart. Be willing. The regret was there. The willingness was there. The desire to make that right was there. And I gave it to God. I gave it to life. You, life, tell me the timing. I'm ready. So I think for the amends, a big thing is that we are ready. And if we're not ready, we're not going to get it. Or if we're doing it not ready, I think we're going to screw it, because it's going to be serving some other agenda. Again, this like lightness of being, or the way I move with my being, is going to create the results, I think, really, because it's going to be more real. It's going to be from the neck down, so to speak. It's going to connect us more. So that was an amend. And let me tell you, during that amend, I felt that I didn't do well. I didn't get this like experience of like, he looked at me, he was incredibly wealthy. And there was a time in my life that I was incredibly wealthy as well. And he knew me for a long time. And here I was living in an office, an 8 by 10 office in the middle of a sober house in a little town in North Jersey. And I had no money and I had a minimum wage job. And he knew that I was capable of a lot more. And I was content and my life was simple. And I was changed by the experience of sobriety and my alcoholism and and he was this incredibly, incredibly wealthy guy who wanted to see where I lived and what I was doing with my life. And I made these amends, and he really didn't understand the spiritual lingo that I was talking, even though I tried to simplify it, nor could he understand why I was content with this. And then 6 months later, so now my impression of that amend is like, nah, I don't feel any thud, I didn't feel any thud, but I did it. Okay. And I showed up in an honest way. I showed up the best way possible. 6 months later, this guy gets diagnosed with a rare illness and is paralyzed from the neck down and ends up in a Mayo Clinic. And one early morning, he's looking at like sunrise out of his window, and he realizes that he has no one in his circle to share that with, the gratitude that he experienced in that moment for some reason or some memories that came up. And he reaches out to me to share that with me. Now, I think 6 months earlier, that amend sucked. So what was that? Maybe I was planting seeds. Maybe there's more happening that I don't understand. Maybe we're leaving a trail, or we're connecting the dots, or we're like showing up in a certain way that at some point that will be felt or seen or understood. It's not up to me. My job is to show up. My job is to be willing. My job is to step into the unknown. My job is to serve the truth and to serve love, because now I value them more than other things that I valued prior to this. And so another amends I did, I show up out of nowhere and I make amends to this friend of mine that I drank with. And I make this amends, not knowing that this man who drank like me and saw me at my worst, not only is blown away by the fact that I'm sober or changed, but he tried to go to Alcoholics Anonymous a year before I showed up with an amend, decided AA sucked and it wasn't for him, walked out of Alcoholics Anonymous, promised himself he'll never walk in there again, decide to try to go dry and white knuckle sobriety. I come in from nowhere. I make this amend. He's so moved by the amend that he leaves the amends and walks back into Alcoholics Anonymous. And he's been a great member of AA who's done the 12 steps and sponsors guys for the last 14 years. I'd like to take credit for that. Like, I'd like to say, like, look at what I did, yeah, he saw me. And like, look, my amends was so good. It got him back into AA. But like, no, not up to me. I don't have a say. And that goes both ways. It goes way, and I know for a fact that it goes ways that if it sucked, or if they didn't hear me, or if they didn't like it, or if they threw me out of the office, or if they didn't accept the amends. And so there were amends like that. I remember like not owing any money, the lightness of being. I remember completing the amends, the lightness of being. And my sponsor had me write them on cards with asking them questions, because I also needed to practice authentic listening. I needed to be willing to hear anything they had to say that I couldn't see, because I can't see it all. I don't really even know. I mean, how do you even make amends for being drunk? I was drunk for over a decade. I don't even remember the things I've said, the things I've done, the ways I've been. I just know that I was not available. I was not available. How can you be a friend if you're not available? How can you be a lover if you're not present? How can you be a sister or a daughter if you're like checked out? always in self, all about me. I mean, those are the kinds of amends that have been the most heartbreaking. Like this, it has stolen years of experiences and memories and connections from the dearest ones. And so the family amends were, and again, like, it's good to verbalize. It's good to show up in an honest and sincere way, humbly. And it is about humility, and it's not about them. And it is about truth, and it is about love, and it is about effort. But more important is that I'm changed. I'm just verbalizing the change that's not only already happened, but I'm in the process of it happening, and I'm committed to it. I'm committed to it continuing to happen. If I'm amending lying to you, what I'm saying is that I honor truth from this day forward. I want to do everything I can to always be honest, no matter what. It's what I stand by, not just to you. I'm amending it to a person maybe that I lied to. But what I'm saying is I no longer move like that. I can't afford to move like that. I don't want to move like that. That hurts me, not just you. It hurts me. It breaks my heart. That to me is, because anything other than that is a fucking homework. It's a homework and a check mark. And that's fake. And that's me still being sick. And that's me just doing homework. Like, this is about change, deep change, change that comes over us, that brings us back home to the depth of our being. The book talks about it is deep down within us that he may be found. And when we search diligently and fearlessly, it is only there that it may be found, is fundamental of the idea of God, right? When you serve that and when you honor that, you can't unlearn that. You can't like just pretend that you didn't like taste that juice. You know what I mean? You can't. So every amend was not just about, setting right the wrong with that relationship, or verbalizing, taking ownership, taking responsibility, owning something, allowing maybe for some healing to happen, or showing up and planting those seeds. But it was about, I no longer move like this. I no longer want to move like this. I no longer honor this way. This way no longer serves me or you or anyone for that matter. I don't want to live like this. It's painful to live like this. It breaks my heart, not just your heart. It's like, I no longer want to betray the deepest self. Hence, I no longer want to betray God. Hence, I no longer want to betray truth and love, which actually is a more normal way for me to live than not. Funny enough. You want to travel lighter through life, be true to the depth of your being, stay in alignment, live from integrity. Life is so much simpler like that. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable when like the mind is like not believed, or when it's questioned. It's unbelievable how lighter we can walk through life. And then you don't need to get loaded. And universe seems to support that. So, all right. So the big book is really good at really specifying about all the amends. It's going to tell you a lot more than I'm telling you right now, by the way. It goes into detail with each amend, how we approach them, what's our energy, what's our attitude, are we frank, calm, and open? We don't take their inventory, we don't criticize them, we don't, shove spirituality and fundamentalism and God down their throat, we don't like judge them, we don't come to them when we're still hating them. We've already had the forgiveness. It's the forgiveness that speaks, really. The way I approach them will speak more than my words, really. And I think that that's very important, because I think a lot of the transformation happens from from the place of how we show up rather than what we say. It's like the words are the last thing. It's like the last thing that tie it up. You know what I mean? I can't really say that I had any infidelity. And with the family, there was a sit down and there was a conversation, but my experience, the conversation was like just, for me, in my experience, the conversation with my mom and my sister who watched me for 30 years and had a dynamic with me for 30 years was uh, just to open the door to this different way of a relationship that we were going to have moving forward. That was maybe more honest and more open in our exchange. I think the way I lived was more important than what I said. And the book talks about it. It's not mumbling, sorry, won't fit the bill, and all of that. It's about how we show up and so it was like even the smallest details. I lived alone from 16, supporting myself. I never had a partner, running buddy, someone I depended on. So it was a little bit different for me. But even just like living from this place of selflessness or showing up more selflessly than selfishly, if showing up to all the family events, taking the train to Long Island for the weekend, making sacrifices, paying for everything, not just for me, but for the children. My sister said, I want you to be an aunt. I want you to be there for these kids that I wasn't there for. And so like these kids, I've dedicated my life to these two children, in a way that makes us incredibly close, and I'm so grateful for that. So it was all of those things today. I take care of my mom. She lives 5 blocks away from me. I'm the only one in her life. I support her. I drive her. I buy her. I do for her. I love her. I even when she pisses me off and pushes my buttons and challenges me in all the ways, there's enough grace that I just want to love her. I just don't know I just don't know. My mom and my sister don't talk, and I can't imagine not talking to her. And I have no judgment of them not talking, it's not my business. Even spiritually coded, idea that they should be talking because it's the right thing. No, if they're not talking, that's reality. I don't need to argue with it, nor do I need to have agenda with it, nor do I need to puppeteer anything about it, because actually that would create more pain. And this 12 steps that taught me that. By the way, I didn't talk to my dad for 10 years because of my alcoholism. My dad was an alcoholic and a gambler. Really wasn't available. I had a story that he abandoned me. He did forget birthdays and didn't show up, and all of that comes with being an active alcoholic and an active gambler. And I was in such a resentment during my drinking years that I just, the argument was he didn't show up as a dad, and so the best my mind can do is so you don't show up as a daughter. But then, the heart opens up and I'm like, but I value being a daughter more than I value. And I end up being an alcoholic just like him. So it's like a double-edged sword. And my inventory reveals that dad didn't abandon me. Dad was a drunk who died as a result of alcoholism. But I got to, because of recovery, take care of him for the last 10 years of his life. Support him, bury him, visit him, love him, hug him, buy him a beer. All of it. Just love him. I was able to love him. I was able to accept him the way he is. That's forgiveness. Allow him. Allow everything to be just like it is, with no argument. That. I don't even know if this has anything to do with the amends, but it has to do with the amends for me. Because the whole thing is about transformation and showing up differently and showing up changed and being moved by something other than the mind. And for me, I think the amends has a lot to do with being moved by the heart and moved by love or God or whatever you want to call it. So, thanks for letting me share. That's all I got.